Whether she's diagnosing Weatherfield's many residents with a migraine, MS, or a much needed dose of reality, Christine Mackie has become a fan favourite character over the years in the role of Dr. Susan, the badass Gaddas. Now, she's been working at Rosamond Street Medical Centre for 10 years now, and finally, I managed to bag an appointment. Pretty standard for the NHS. Christine, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you very, very much. I'm very pleased indeed to speak to you.
I'm very, very pleased to speak to you as well. I mean, Gemma and I, back at the beginning of August, did this retrospective about Dr. Gaddas. But after 10 years, I can't believe it's been that long, can you?
I know, and I was so thrilled, Michael, that actually that decade had been marked in such a lovely way.
We got so many likes on social media when we published that episode. Despite being a minor character, Dr. Gaddas really has developed a bit of a cult following. Is there something that you've been, is it something you've been aware of? Because you don't really do social media too much, do you?
I don't, because I'm just a bit slow. But so I have a kind of little production company called Best Girl Productions, which we came out of a play that I did. So my daughter Lois deals with kind of that. So I've started to be a bit more practically involved, but no, I don't. But I do know from my own experience of kind of over the 10 years of people that I meet, people love Gaddas, and I'm deeply grateful that they do. People are so nice about her and always want to talk about her and what she does and how she is. And I think, as I was saying in the past, that there's a kind of, because she's a bit like the Doctor you can't quite have anymore because the relationship is so changed for us. There's this little bit of nostalgia, but on the other hand, she's very in the moment and very present when she's doing everything. So she's absolutely involved and I think has affection for the characters. That's how I've always played it, that I like working there. I like the place. I like the area. Going to the cabin and getting some polos, kind of thing. Because that's actors for you, though, isn't it? They always create their own backstories and fill in the gaps.
Were you given much of a character outline when you first got the part, or was it just
no,
Doctor?
Not at all. And the first two episodes, so the booking was for 2 episodes, and the first one was with Max. Being diagnosed with ADHD, and the other one was for Beth Dinker, who had an adverse reaction to one of Sinead's bath bombs. So it's like, that's perfect Corrie for me, because and it kind of sums up, I think, the best of soap. So you deal with something about, there's this boy that has issues and it's difficult for the family and it's difficult for him, and that's dealt with, and it's not in just 2 sentences. It's quite a long scene and it's complicated and there's resistance to it and all of that. Fantastic. And then you've got Beth coming in with some terrible thing that's happened to her skin, and what can it be? And we kind of get to the bottom of it. And I don't remember the exact line, but the final thing at the end was something like saying to her, please don't worry, we can we'll be able to sort out the hives, but the hypochondria might be a little bit more difficult. And kind of thing, which again is just beautiful Corrie.
Over the years, we've slowly been drip fed information about Dr. Gaddas. I mean, it took, I don't know, 2 years to find out that she had a son, even longer to find out what her first name is. Do you think it's right that a character like her retains these mysteries? And do you think that kind of contributes to what people like about her?
Yeah, I think if the name thing was interesting, the Christian name, because it was during the period when we were in the surgery and doing quite a lot with Liz, and we all had a laugh about that, because it was like, what do you think? Do we look like a Susan? I don't know. And all of that kind of thing. And then the business about the son, and then the kind of revelation in the episodes with Tim and Peter about her having a wife and a dog and living close by, because that was just so fantastic. Those episodes were very, very funny. I think that's an interesting thing again, isn't it? You have people that are part of your life. Like, we used to have a fantastic doctor, family doctor, and when we moved up to Lancaster, we went with the same practice, so we had the same doctor. His name was, I don't know whether I should say this actually. Anyway, we had a nickname for him. The family had a nickname for him. It was
Yeah.
affectionate. But it was forever. We'll just call, and then we'd say this name. You know, we had an affection, and that's who he was in the family, and everybody knew. And sometimes you'd bite your tongue because you wanted to say it when you saw him, kind of thing. But, and I think so. I don't mind that it's that I didn't feel the need for me to have a Christian name, kind of thing. But I do think it's interesting when little bits creep out. And I always think that it's with anything, isn't it? It's like some of the situations when you're talking about, particularly, I think, issues about like talking therapies and about depression and about things which are about how do you make the move to try and ask for help? Who can help you? Who can support you? And I know that she's queen of the leaflet, but I do think she's very interested. This is me. What am I saying? That in like that whole thing with Steve and his depression, about talking it out, about including people, asking people to help. And I've always seen that. I've always liked that element to how they write her. That she wants to, in a way, she wants to get rid of the desk and actually, what can we do?
It's interesting that you've got a bit of an idea about what she's like in your head, because we know so little about her from the screen. So it's good that you've developed a bit of an idea about what sort of person that she's like, even if we don't explicitly get told of it.
Well, what happens very often, if you're you will recognize the pattern, but if you're a guest in a continual drama, very often there's it seems to me that there's almost a sort of formula of how many scenes you'll get, or how it will play. And I just came in for 2 episodes. Obviously, I always had this little alternative soap opera in my head in which I was extremely busy and had other things to do. And so I was just seeing you, Michael, well, let's get on with this. And what can we, and what's, you know, so that there was a sense of me not just being dropped from nowhere behind this desk, and you'll see me for 2 scenes and maybe a scene in the next episode. And that's so that there was a sense of, yeah, I've got things to do. I know where everything is. I've got my, you know, so that because there is a busyness, everybody has what, 8 minutes now, or what the time. Like, you know, and obviously my consultations are considerably shorter because it's television, and there's other things to do, and my job is to serve, in the same way as an actor in a play is to serve the play, is to serve the movement of the piece, is to serve the main characters who leave me and go on to the big story and go on to, and that's, I've never had any issue with that. That's the function, if you like. But I have always quite enjoyed the idea that when they go, I've got things to do and I'm going to go and do them. That I'm not left suspended until you need me again.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I suppose it all ties in with the idea of what we were talking about, what Gemma and I were talking about, and lots of other people have, about whether Gaddas should become a regular character in the same way as we've recently seen happen to DS Swain. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I do have little dreams of like being spotted and called into playing the darts team or something like that, you know, which I would just adore because I do like darts. I used to play darts quite a lot, and things, you know, that kind of stuff. But I do love one of the things I've always loved as a viewer of Corrie is the kind of lucky coincidence of who you bump into and how something unfolds. And she's been in positions like that more than I would have anticipated. And people are very confident about approaching her and talking to her. So, you know, the badass thing is interesting. So, you know, one episode when it was all the about the Lyme's disease and going into the pub, which of course is still an absolute thrill and a half. Going to the requisite, that has not diminished for me, but going in and looking and waiting to get Gemma's attention, and Shona just looking around and going, badass, you know, I mean, that's, you know, that's fantastic, Shona, you know, and we can get on with the story. And I think I like to think that there's kind of room for that kind of thing, because it's an enriching.
Yeah,
I don't
sure.
think it takes away. I think it enriches, but I don't think it distracts from what the scene was, which was talking to Gemma and saying, well, I've had this idea. What about, you know, it just, because at home, we'd always called Gaddas Badass. And then it happened in the episode with Jeff when he called her. And in fact, that one of my Christmas presents that year, my husband had, I'd kept the page because it made us laugh so much, because my daughters had always called me Badass. That it actually a little framing of the thing, and Badass being kind of underlined because it had been such a kind of house joke.
I think some of the most character development we got for you was when you used to have those scenes with Liz and Moira in the medical centre as well. Tell me a bit about what it was like working with those two actresses.
Well, it was very, very funny because they're both very warm and easy to work with people, and we had a lot of giggles about it. And I think, well, I wouldn't speak out of turn, but I think Bev really enjoyed being in a different environment. You know, she had those glasses which didn't have any real glass in, but she put them on and she'd feel more intelligent and all of that. And I just loved all of that. And there was there was kind of activity in the building, and that was very jolly. And Moira was a peculiar character, wasn't she? Because she was so difficult. And so that you had an allegiance against her and all of that. And it was very, very interesting and nice, and an opportunity to be funny. Although there's always been humour embedded in a lot of Gaddas scenes, for which I'm very grateful. And I've just loved playing that, like with Tim and the dropping his trousers and all.
Yeah, and I think that Gaddas and Moira is a spin-off waiting to happen, personally. It's a shame that she had to disappear. Going back to what Dr. Gaddas does best, diagnosing the many ailments of the street. It seems in looking at your past work, you've had quite a few doctory roles over the years on TV. Yeah. Is this just something of interest to you, or has it just happened that you've been given those roles?
I think it's a thing. I think it's partly a thing that, I mean, so I've been in Corrie four times, 4 different characters in Corrie. And as you rightly said, the first one was the nurse, when it was all the Blackpool high drama for Rita and for Beth. And then I was with Martin as a teacher, sort of, when he was training to be a nurse and things like that. But certainly as I got older, I think this is one of the things that happens with roles. You know, when I first started on television, I played a lot of, well, my husband used to say mad, sad, bad. And that was pretty much, I played a lot of women who were talked about when they left the room, that kind of thing, and very emotional. I did a lot of that, a lot of crying. So I think as you get older, it's like the life bit is taken away, and what you're left with are people who present positions of authority, or, you know, whether it's a prison governor or a doctor or a judge, or and that's a challenge as you get older, because you feel still ready to play people who are full of life and challenge and complications, and still making choices and still feeling very just as alive. And yet what you're often asked to read for and play are people who are not quite two-dimensional, but are, you know, the lifeblood has kind of gone a bit, and they are functional. And that's fine. Work is work. And what I was saying about Gaddas, my purpose is about you in this scene. It's about your plot, what's happened, why you've come to see her. That's the point of the scene. It's not about me.
Do you find it difficult at all? Is it a challenge to learn all the medical jargon that you have to spout out?
I'm not great at that. And I do actually sometimes write things down. Just not so much for me to read. It's not like, you know, having things stuck on the lamp for me to read, but just between takes, so that I can just remember, rather than faff around and get my sides out and look at them. I'm not great on that. And I do absolutely, God, I'm quite clumsy actually, but I get very nervous when I have to do injections.
Oh, I
When
bet.
we did Bertie,
Yeah,
having
God.
his
Yeah, I remember
jabs,
that one.
and he's such a sweet little boy. That obviously they change children as they get older, but he was such a sweetie pie and did not want to cry. I don't think particularly, he was quite happy. And then and of course you have the medical staff who bring you and you take the top off and then you do this and then you do this and you've got the gloves on and everything, and and it's a bit, and of course people are waiting. So that's the thing in television, isn't it? You don't want to hold up anything because but if you're the one who has to put on the gloves and do the thing, goodness knows how people manage when they're in something full time like Casualty. I don't know, but so yeah, that technical bit was a bit of a challenge.
You had was it last year you had Cassie passed out on the alley and you
Oh
had
yeah, in the back street. Yes,
Yeah.
that was, and put that straight in. Yeah, I know. But I like what you said about, I think Gaddas has a real soft spot for babies.
Yeah,
I think
it seems to.
she loves, I think she, which isn't necessarily me, but I think she absolutely it has been from day one very interested in kids and making them try and feel comfortable.
Yeah, because there was that.
I've never given anybody a sticker, which of course I remember very clearly my kids loving stickers, but they don't do those.
There was the other scene with baby when Sinead was in on her deathbed and you had the baby there as well, didn't you, Bertie?
They were so beautifully written and directed. Like Lacey, the scenes that I was in those stories. And everybody they were so good. The actors were so good, and it was lovely. And there was an element of almost improvisation about everything, and the atmosphere was remarkable.
Yeah, you all did a really good job with those scenes.
It was very lovely, and the baby was very, allowed the child to do that. It's not always the case. I did Downton Abbey. I did several episodes of Downton Abbey, and we had a change of child. We had, because very often this, they might use twins so that they can swap over, so that the children aren't asked to do too much. And we had a scene which should have been included, I think, in the beginning of the story of the Bryants, and couldn't do it. Kids, why? It's a big ask. It's not a criticism. It just was hard. It was hard. But one of the first jobs I ever did was a baby. I had a baby. I did. I don't know whether you were young enough to remember this, but old enough either to recall it. But there used to be a series of adverts for Commercial Union, and their tagline was, "Won't make a drama out of a crisis." And every story was based on something that they'd actually paid out money for. I learned later. And we filmed it at L Street, big lot. And it was this story of this poor woman, and she had a toddler and a baby and a dog. And she put some tins of dog food. She put the dinner in the oven, picked up the baby, went with the dog into the living room, sat on the sofa and lit a cigarette. The toddler put some tins of dog food, opened the oven, put a tin of dog food in there, closed the oven, came in. The oven exploded and then she shot up. She threw her cigarette into the back of the sofa and set fire to it. I mean, honestly, it was like I was so nervous. It was one of those I couldn't, and I don't know what it was, but I kind of seemed to have a sort of electric shock. So whenever I picked up this child, it just screamed, and then they'd bring the other baby, and I picked up, and it was like I was some kind of Cruella. Oh gee, I hold this big, and then there they had 2 dogs, 2 babies, 2 toddlers. Explosion.
That's enough. Speaking about your early roles, I wanted to go back to a little bit about what you were sort of saying when you were in the Blackpool episodes of Corrie back in 1999. You were obviously working alongside Julie Goodyear, Barbara Knox, proper Corrie legends there. What memories do you have of that particular role?
It was. I was very nervous about it, and we filmed in Blackpool. No, we didn't. We filmed in location, so we weren't in the old Key Street.
Mm.
And I remember arriving, and everybody was kind of set up. And again, there's a lot of pressure when you're a guest to not delay anything. And even if you're made welcome, you're aware people are waiting because you don't know where everything is. So you're trying to just sort of fit in. And it's that, you know, I absolutely grew up with the pair of them, and it was very daunting. Because it was like they were sort of doubly present, because they were present in the scene, but there was also this kind of presence of everything else that they bring to it. So it was very nerve-wracking. I remember that, but everybody lovely. And that has been a constant for me in working in Coronation Street. The crew, oh my God, how lovely is everybody, and how much they and the actors, even when they, you know, it all shifted and they were doing gazillions of scripts, episodes a week, and suddenly they were carrying around bundles and bundles of scripts and things like that, they still seem to me to look for an opportunity to lark about and have some fun, and that is absolutely embedded in the work ethic, I think, and I adore that.
Yeah. Did you also enjoy playing it was the salsa instructor you played with?
Oh my God,
Amy,
I loved that.
that was a bit
And
of a
I
different type
particularly
of
loved,
character.
I know, Bella, she was mad, wasn't it? And I had this extraordinary costume. I remember going and thinking, oh, I'll just be in some sort of tracksuity thing. And then I think we went to Urban Outfitters, and I had this incredible sort of rah-rah skirt and leotard and a big bow in my head. It was so, you know, mad, really. But she was funny and good fun, and obviously very fortunate to work with Julie in that scene, and a very remarkably hilarious script as well. When she goes and she tries to get everybody back to look at the gowns. Every sequin is sewn on by a blind person. That was the text. Guess who wrote that?
Who? Go on.
Jonathan Harvey.
Was it? I was wondering whether it had been him.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. It was outrageous.
So when you finally got this role of Dr. Gaddas, was there any inkling that it would be a part that you'd keep on coming back to for years to come? I know you said it was originally a 2-episode stint, but how did
actually there was a follow-up fairly quickly. No, because it was just a job, and it was I think just immediately after that I did an episode of Banana. The Russell T Davies Cucumber Banana, which was very funny, and that was almost kind of at the same time, and in fact I wondered whether they would clash, but I was able to do both of them. But then another booking came in really quickly, and very, very lucky, and then they've just carried on. And I think that the fact that I've been able to keep going, and because I'm not on a held contract, they come in for periods of time, and when they've clashed with things, like when I've been on tour, actually we managed to sometimes make them work, or if I've been working in Manchester on theatre, that I cut off time when I leave, and all of that kind of thing. So, you know, I've been grateful for that. Yeah, and I've made some good mates. It's been very nice.
Well, we've seen plenty of doctors and police officers and all these kinds of things come into the show over the years. Why do you think that Gaddas is the one that they have kept on? What is it that's made them say, well, let's get a new doctor now? Why hasn't that happened, do you think?
Yeah, well, I mean, we had a bit of a thing, didn't we, when the young doctor came in who was related to Michelle.
Oh yeah,
that was that kind of yeah, and that was sort of, you know, Will Young, and I think there was a challenge. In fact, I think there was actually a scene in the Rovers where people say, no, but she's a bit old school, Gaddas. I like her. Yes, but doctor, you know, and there was a conversation about the kind of pros and cons of the two of them. So I don't know how long they'll keep her, but I think there is value in a familiarity. That can come and go, but be slightly different, and the situations change. And she sometimes has been with some characters been quite hard and quite got no time for you. No. So I think in some ways, once they open it up and they actually show that there are more facets to her, then it also opens up the opportunity to call on those again.
Sure.
For something, you know. But yeah, and like the most recent scene with Hope, gosh, she's quite a great little actress. She's so
great.
fantastic. You know, it's funny, and there's an opportunity to play, not just straight and delivering lines, and I relish that.
Have you got any other particular scenes in your office that we haven't talked about yet that particularly stand out in your memory?
I thought all the stuff with Jeff and his kind of coercive behavior with Yasmin was interesting, and I think that there was a fantastic scene when she came in and I had to give her the news that she'd got this you know, she'd caught something, and it was a really well written scene. I remember, because it was very on the front foot. This is what it is. This is what it is. Well, you have to ask him. And she's so lovely, you know, and has a kind of, what do you mean, kind of in her delivery, it allows it for you to respond in a very, I don't know what you mean, but what. And Gaddas was, well, you know, it's your responsibility. He has to be challenged. And I thought that was really good, and I really enjoyed playing that scene with her. That was fantastic.
Yeah, I think Gaddas and Yasmin could be friends.
Yeah, I think they might read the same books.
Yeah, I reckon.
I think so. And I think, you know, a possible in the community centre get together on that front. And I always like work, you know, Gaddas and Steve. That's always fun. And like I was rather pleased when you mentioned the bit about when she left her car.
Yes.
Manchester, because that was I mean, the words were there, but what she had done and why was entirely us playing. And we liked the idea that she'd actually had a hell of a good night.
Yeah.
And decided to get the cab home. And it was sort of understood and a little surprising. And it was nice to play.
It must be a bit of a treat when you get to film somewhere different to the usual office.
Well, it is, and it is, because, you know, you've got this, the desk is a sort of barrier, I suppose, in some ways, isn't it? Because, and I suppose actually not many doctors' surgeries have that system anymore, but obviously it makes a great deal of sense for filming. But no, it's very nice to get out and about and be in different places and see. And I know that home visits, you know, everybody goes, oh, nobody can't get a doctor to come to you because you, things like that. But then I think she is in that community, in that world.
Yeah.
She is passing that house to go and get her car. She, you know, all of that kind of thing. So I think there's a kind of suspension of disbelief a bit about all of that. Yeah, no, I've had some very, very jolly times filming. I really have enjoyed myself enormously.
Are there any characters that you think are maybe overdue an appointment with Dr. Gaddas, someone you'd like to have things with?
Well, I would have liked to have had an appointment with Gail, and I have had an exchange with Tracy, but I'd like her to be in. I'd be terrified actually of having her in the surgery. Well, yeah, the side of the desk, because I think she's probably got very long arms and she could reach me.
What are your views on the role that soaps like Coronation Street have in getting these medical issues out to the public and raising awareness? Because you know, there's been plenty over the years in Corrie, haven't there?
There have, and I think they've been, you know, laudable and handled very well. And I think, you know, again with Steve, that whole thing about men talking about their mental health, absolutely fantastic, because he didn't stop being Steve. He didn't stop, you know, but seeing all this weight and then him having to go back into the Rovers and work, and, you know, and they really stayed with that. I think that is good. I mean, sometimes it does feel like a bit leaflety. I mean, I think the worst thing that Gaddas ever did was when Faye, you know, she was literally accused of eating all the pies when she was pregnant. I mean, I think I literally said, here's a leaflet about overeating. Completely insensitive to that. But
I mean, everyone's enjoying the MND storyline, aren't they? Isn't Peter amazing in that role?
Yeah, absolutely extraordinary. commitment to it,
Mm.
I think, was outstanding and beautifully played by him and his family, extended family of characters, because they were faultless, I think, in how they responded to every change and you know, diminishing of his ability to survive. No, I think that's it's a big ask. It's like, but again, that's one of the reasons we love it, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we see ourselves, we see an element of something of ourselves, and when they make a decision to ask for help or they don't, or and I know it's, everybody goes, oh, it's all crime and it's all this or whatever, but I think our fondness and our affection for the people are still at the heart of the drama.
Yeah,
and
sure.
Comedy. And I love the comedy. I love all of that. It's the best.
Yeah. You've had a long and varied career, and recently you've turned your hand to playwriting, haven't you? Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, that kind of happened a bit by chance. I have tried to write things before. In fact, I wrote a television series, typical me, did the whole thing, not just a treatment. So I have available an 8-part series about women's darts and dart team. But I got commissioned to write for doctors, and I did one episode, but I was acting at the same time, and I was new to Zoom. I don't think there was Zoom actually then. I found it challenging and I didn't have much confidence. But when it came to the play, my daughter Lois did a scratch night at Hope Mill Theatre in Manchester, where people try different things, spoken word or whatever. And so she said, oh, I've got 20 minutes. What shall I do? So we looked at kind of monologues and one thing and another. And I said, I'll write you something. And she said, all right then. So I did. I wrote this piece. And we got a director on board, and we, invested in it, if you like, in time and everything. And she was just remarkable, and people loved it and had a real response to it. And so they said, what are you going to do with it? And I said, no, really. And then that was on the Friday night. And then on the Monday, I entered the play as a play in the Greater Manchester Fringe. And I wrote then I wrote the play. And the play was a semi-autobiographical thing about suicide and how it affects families, and what this person, this individual, this girl. And I kind of updated it to instead of it being about my father who had fought in the Second World War, to the character's father who fought in the Gulf War. And it was about how that affects you, and it kind of comes, you don't know why she is behaving and why she's like she is, and until quite a way into the play. But it had a remarkable response, and it got nominated for new stage writing for award, and best production and best actor for Lois. And then we did it at the Edinburgh Festival, all the run through the festival, and we did a short tour, and then COVID. So that was just remarkable for me. And and then after that, I got a couple of ideas and I just started playing. Then it was lockdown. Had this idea, partly because of actually what we talked about, the thing about older actors and what you see them, how you see them, and how much of it you actually recognize, or how much you go, oh, that's an old person, let's wait till we get to get back to the drama. And so I through lockdown, I when it sort of started to lift, I got a couple of actors and a director, and I paid for them to come and stay with us at St Lancaster for 3 days. And the Duke's Theatre gave us some space, so we tried the play out and got lots of people in, but they were all in masks and they couldn't even share pencils to give feedback. I mean, it's like another thing, isn't it? Anyway, and it was so well received. And the theatre said, if you apply for Arts Council funding and you get it, we will give you support in kind and let you have the space. And I did. And so we did this play, and it had called Kin, and it was very, very well received. And it's a dark comedy. It's funny, but it deals with some stuff. And the women never talk about their age. It's 2 sisters-in-law, haven't seen each other for decades. And when the brother dies, they're brought together and they discover that this man has actually manipulated the narrative of their life. So what they thought about each other is completely, and it's got lots of kind of cliffhangers and suspenseful. It's a bit whodunity, and they're fantastic performances. So we're taking it on tour. So they're in rehearsal at the moment, and it opens in Lancaster on the 9th of September. And then we finish up with a week at home in Manchester at the last week of October.
Brilliant.
So, and then I did something else for vignettes,
right,
with Race for Life. And so I'm very much enjoying going to the rehearsal and walking away. I walk out of the room, I leave them too. Oh my God, it's fantastic. So I'm full of kind of ideas. And I think it's been interesting because the whole thing about kind of ageism in the arts, and there's been quite a lot of national articles about people not being commissioned if they're over 40. And of course one has to nurture new writing. Of course you do, but you don't stop having something to say.
Sure.
You don't stop having something that might, you know, that is provocative. It's not about let me as an older person write in a nostalgic way about a memory play. This is not nostalgia. You know, this is very full-on drama with these women absolutely at the center of it, instead of sort of being on the periphery.
Yeah, like I said, I'm hoping that we'll be able to come up and see it.
Oh, so do I. Thank you, darling. I hope so too.
Well, listen, Christine, it's been lovely speaking to you today. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast and telling us a little bit more about the woman behind Dr. Gaddas, who we all love.
Oh, well, thank you. It's been a complete pleasure.
No worries. Right. Bye-bye.
Bye, darling. Bye-bye.